Remington 700 short action, first bedding job. Used JB World because it was cheap and available. Would have preferred Marine Tech's. DevCon's probably a bit too expensive for me. I used Monster tape, Gorilla tape. I did 2 layers on the front of the recoil lug, 1 layer on the side attached to the recoil lug. I put some tape along the inside there, that made that clean line. Some Gorilla tape along the inside there too. I use these 1/4 inch blind studs, head cut off, and I found that one wrapping of Gorilla tape made them fit snug in the hole, in the stock hole. I used Imperial sizing wax. That was okay. I had a tiny bit stick to the action, very thin layer, but that came off with a little bit of delicate persuasion. First I banded the barrel about there with that roughly 1 foot of tape, and I let the tang just sit on the actual wood. So it was sitting on the wood, and the floated barrel from the tape, and I used the 2 blind studs, put them in the action like that. Those tapes stop the pillow holes getting filled up. I let that sit for 2 days. Then I took the tape off the barrel. I could have put on an extra layer, it seemed to be sitting down in the channel a bit. And I recessed the wood around there. I put some tape down in there and a bit of foam, cut out a little bit of foam. I put that in there, recess the wood. I put a bit of foil in here, as suggested by an experienced gunsmith, and I snugged that, so it was contact plus a tiny bit just to make it snug. So at that stage, the action's secured here, and the tang's floating at the correct level as set by the king action. And I waited 2 days. These studs with the tape on wouldn't fit through the floor plate. Later on I used some plumber's tape, about 5 turns. So after doing those 2, I figured I should have a look at the floor plate. There was a little bit of seesawing. The floor plate that's the middle of the action, touches on either side there. That's the front of the action, king. So I figured, after placing it in and out several times, I found it sat flush there, and I left this hanging. So I bedded this end first, and I set one of these pins up before I put the glue in. I recessed the wood, of course, a bit. Put one of these pins up from the rifle action side, flush. Then I put the Teflon on the end, plumber's Teflon, so that's sat in there. And use that, and I pushed the other pin through down into the homemade reloading block. So that kept the pillar channel fairly clean. What was left behind, I used a 7mm drill bit carefully. There's a little bit in there. So I was hoping to put the action in to make it snug, but I found it sat there pretty steadily. So the second one, the tang end, or the trigger end of the floor plate, I just let sit there like that. I found because there was the seesawing in the middle, there's still a little bit of a gap there, because this was sitting up a little bit higher. So I was tempted to bed in the middle part, or relieve the middle part, but it seems to me there's a little bit of, from visual inspection, a little bit of play in the middle, so it's not pivoting there. It's just contacting there and there, with a small amount of relief in there. You can see on the wood where there was previously contact. So I'd be tempted to relieve that out, or maybe better, but that's getting pretty close to that tiny spring, which I hesitate to take out. But I did punch out that pin, so when I was bedding the front end, that pin and floor plate wasn't near the epoxy action. So now that sits in, with this piece I put electrical tape around the end, thinking it was a bit thinner than the Gorilla tape, because I still wanted it to sit naturally rather than be affected by the tape. So now there's a see a tiny bit of play, so that should still help it self-center a bit if need be. But there's no seesawing. It's a little bit hard to take out, it has to come straight out. Around the walls was sort of incidental. I didn't even prepare around the walls. I was just thinking of the downward pressure. So with the tape around the action, I just got a cotton earbud. I waxed around the wood first, and then once it was put in, just got a cotton earbud and wiped it off. Slippery Pete was very patient in his moral support on this job. There's still a little bit of backward forward motion due to the relief, the double tape relief in front of the recoil lug. And apparently you don't want the sides of the recoil lug touching either. But there's a lot less motion in the stock now. Got an air bubble there, I've got a tiny bit of a lip there, and a tiny bit of a lip there, lip there, lip there. That shouldn't make any difference, I hope. And these pins when I was doing the action from the top down, helped keep the action central and straight to the hole. So apparently you don't want the action screws touching the sides of the holes. I also, in the spirit of getting a bit carried away, noted that these holes here in the floor plate, which had been painted black with texture to see if there was any uneven wear, weren't wearing evenly on the screws. So I got a tiny little bit of valve grinding paste, which is scarily aggressive, and then I spun the action screws in there a little bit using the drill, a lot less and a lot more. I think this is just aluminium maybe. You can see on the screws there, and there and there. They're no longer black, so they've been ground in, the long one at the back, the short one at the front. And then I used some metal polish, Autosol metal polish, to smooth that up after the fairly aggressive Permatex. So that might make a more consistent bearing contact, a better mate. Hopefully it's in square. That's the Remington 700 short action bedding scenario. I wiped out that excess, but I haven't bothered filing it flat or anything. That could have come up a little bit, but again, probably not necessary. And those parts that go forward of that line, I put tape there too, so the tape went guy doing the lighting, probably see that line there. The tape went there and down. There was a fair bit of clearance for the trigger anyway. So these little bits on the side will have been waxed. They'd probably just come off, but I'm just leaving there because it doesn't make a difference as far as I can tell. The punch set, the not plastic brass hammer to be used carefully, scissors, cotton earbuds, alcohol for cleaning, other lubes. Apparently the clear shoe polish is good too. I'll be tempted to go that way next time rather than use this.